Well, good morning, and welcome to Hofstra University's Black History Month signature speaker event. And I have to add today, happy 217th birthday to President Abraham Lincoln. Hofstra University is excited to welcome home to Hempstead, Long Island, Karine Jean-Pierre, a distinguished public servant and voice in American civic life. I want to thank Athleen Collins, who's more than just partially responsible for this, and the whole Hofstra Cultural Center for organizing this signature speaker event. Let's give them a hand. The Cultural Center, it plays a vital role in bringing to campus speakers who offer different views and perspectives. They support free speech, academic freedom, and dialogue. I also want to take my turn in welcoming our guests today, starting with Village of Hempstead Mayor Waylon Hobbs. We're delighted to have you here, Mayor, today. There are, of course, Hofstra students, staff, and faculty present, as well as we heard students from 18 different schools across the region. So welcome to everybody. We also have members of Alpha Kappa Alpha, aka sorority, here today, members of the National Council of Negro Women, and members of the Long Island chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and friends and neighbors from surrounding communities. So thank you all for being here today. As we continue our observance here at Hofstra of Black History Month, we reaffirm Hofstra University's commitment to preserving and celebrating Black history, which is American history. The achievements, the struggles, the courage, the leadership, and the cultural contributions of Black Americans are central to the story of this nation. And we are proud at Hofstra to honor that history while also celebrating those actively making the next chapter of America's history. As White House Press Secretary and Senior Advisor to President Joe Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre helped shape how this nation sees its government and understands its purpose. The daughter of Haitian immigrants, Ms. Jean-Pierre grew up here in the village of Hempstead and made her way all the way to the White House, breaking barriers as the first Black and the first openly queer White House press secretary. Ms. Jean-Pierre embodies the resilience, the brilliance, and courage that we celebrate this month. And to all of the students here in particular, Karine Jean-Pierre demonstrates that dreaming big and working hard can pay off in extraordinary ways. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Cameron Bowden, a Hofstra student who will formally introduce Ms. Jean-Pierre. Cameron is a senior at Hofstra, majoring in journalism and political science, while also pursuing her master's degree. In her time at Hofstra, Cameron has held roles as station manager and chief content officer of Hofstra's award-winning radio station, WRHU-FM. She has also acted as a producer, reporter, and anchor at the radio station. She has worked as a production intern at CNN, Yahoo Finance, and Meet the Press Now. So please join me in welcoming Cameron Bowden to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Poser, and thank you all for attending this Black History Month signature event. Karine Jean-Pierre is the former White House press secretary and senior advisor to President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. Born in Martinique and raised in New York by Haitian immigrant parents, Jean-Pierre has had an extensive career in public service. She began by serving as legislative and budget affairs for one city council member, and later as deputy chief of staff for another, in addition to working for the Center for Community and Corporate Ethics. In 2008, she joined former President Barack Obama's campaign and the Obama-Biden White House and served as the Deputy Battleground States Director for Obama's re-election campaign in 2012. Jean-Pierre is the first Black person and first openly LGBTQ+ press secretary in U.S. history, and played a pivotal role as chief of staff to then running mate Kamala Harris, who became the nation's first woman, Black, and South Asian American elected vice president. Ms. Jean-Pierre has also worked as a political analyst for NBC and MS Now in the area of democracy, social justice, and public policy. Her contributions have been recognized with numerous honors, including the MLK Day Visionary Award and the National Action Network, and the Phoenix Award from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. She comes to Hofstra University to discuss her time in her position, the state of American politics today, and her two books, Moving Forward, A Story of Hope, Hard Work, and the Promise of America, and Independent, a look inside a broken White House outside the party lines. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Karine Jean-Pierre.
So let me first start out by saying thank you to the leadership of Hofstra. I got an opportunity to talk to Susan, who I've met before, so thank you so much for having me again. To the faculty and staff and to the students, both from Hofstra and from our local high school, like 18 of you guys, 18 different schools here, so that's really great. So thank you for spending your time here with me this morning. I am especially grateful to be speaking here in Uniondale because, as you've heard from many people before me, this is home. This is really much home for me. This is not unfamiliar ground. I grew up right next door in Hempstead, and the mayor of Hempstead is here, my friend, hello. So this isn't just a professional visit, as I was stating, this is incredibly personal to me. And I want to also thank Cameron. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. What an impressive resume you've got going on, my friend. I can't wait. One day I'll probably be working for you. So thank you. So I came of age in Hempstead, a community full of culture, ambition, struggle, and resilience. It's the kind of place where you learn early that opportunity and inequality often live side by side. When you see talent everywhere, but access unevenly distributed. And where you begin to understand, sometimes before you have the language for it, that systems shape outcomes. I attended Columbia Memorial High School just right next door to where we are right now, sitting and standing. And on weekends, I used to come right here to the Hofstra Library to study. I wasn't enrolled here. I wasn't even imagining myself on this very stage that I stand on today. I was just a young person trying to make sense of my future. Those quiet hours mattered more than I realized at the time. Because what I was really learning was this: proximity to opportunity changes what you believe is possible. In high school, I ran cross country and track and field. And during spring track, my event was 400 intermediate hurdles. Any track and field runners out there? Yeah, all right, okay. Now, if you know that race, you know it's not just about speed. It's about rhythm, timing, endurance, and courage. You're sprinting at full effort, and just when your body wants to stop, an obstacle appears in front of you. Not one, not two, but hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. You don't get to go around them. You don't get to slow down, because if you do that, you'll fall on your face, trust me. You have to clear them while still moving forward. That race taught me something that has stayed with me my entire life. You can face obstacles you never thought you could overcome and still keep going. Sometimes you don't feel ready. Sometimes you don't feel enough, but you run anyway. You jump anyway. You trust your training. And guess what? You land. And that, in its simplest form, is hope. Hope is not passive. Hope is action. Hope is running toward that hurdle, making the next call, showing up for the next one, even when the finish line isn't quite clear. So let's try something. Hang with me for a second if you don't mind. When I say obstacle, you say jump. Ready? Obstacle. One more time. So we got ahead of the game for a second. Obstacle. Say it a little louder. Obstacle. All right. I may come back to that, so hang tight there. So now I want you to think about, just for a moment, about the biggest hurdle in front of you right now. Not someone else's. Don't think about anybody else. This is a moment to be selfish. Think about yourself. It might be school, money, family, fear, or feeling like you don't quite belong. That hurdle is not proof that you're failing. It's proof that you're running. And you're still moving forward, right? You can clear that hurdle. You can. So years later, when I was working at the White House, I kept a black and white photograph in my office. It showed high school girls who were running over hurdles, jumping hurdles, and it caught them midair. And I kept that photo in my office intentionally. It was actually right next to me, right next to my desk was right here, and it was on the wall right next to me. And every time before I went to the podium in the briefing room, I would take a look at it, because it reminded me that on the hardest days, when challenges are really tough, I could overcome that, even if it felt overwhelming. Even when obstacles felt too high, that I would imagine myself jumping over those hurdles. It reminded me that I already knew how to face obstacles head on, that I knew how to keep moving forward when stopping felt easier. That difficulty does not mean impossibility. Remember that. The photo wasn't just about track. It was about life, leadership, and also, right now in this moment, democracy. It reminded me that hope, again, is action. Taking the next steps, making the next call, showing up the next day, showing up to vote, showing up to fight for your community, showing up for yourself. Many of you in this room are coming of age during a time of deep uncertainty. You've lived through a global pandemic that disrupted education and even mental health, political polarization that feels exhausting, social movements demanding justice and backlash against them, a constant stream of information that makes it hard to know what is what or what to trust. So if you feel frustrated by politics, you're not wrong. And if you feel disillusioned, you're not alone. But disengagement comes at a cost, because decisions are still being made whether you participate or not. Let me tell you why I take voting, for example, because this is really important, so seriously. So my parents grew up in Haiti, the first nation in the Western Hemisphere founded by formerly enslaved people who overthrew their colonizers and declared themselves free. So if you don't know, now you know. That history alone tells us something powerful. People can imagine freedom long before they are allowed to live it. But hope did not protect my family from hardship. My maternal grandmother raised my mother and her twin sister until a devastating famine forced him into an unthinkable choice, sending his daughters to different families so they might survive. My mother was treated not as a daughter, but as labor. She later learned that her twin sister had died. As my parents began building a life together, Haiti fell under a dictatorship. Voices were silenced. Participation became dangerous. So when my parents eventually left, crossing borders, rebuilding again and again, they carried something precious with them. The belief that having a voice matters. Years later, when my father and I became U.S. citizens, I watched him vote for the first time in decades. I watched a man who had once lived under a dictatorship reclaim his voice in a democracy. That moment taught me this. Democracy is fragile, folks. It's really fragile. And it survives only when people participate. And participating is an act of hope. It's an act of action. As Sojourner Truth, a New York native, once said, "Truth is powerful and it prevails. Your voice, your participation matters. You are part of shaping that truth." Some of you here today will be voting for the first time, or you'll be voting very soon. Voting is not a reward. It really isn't. It's civic engagement. It's a responsibility. It doesn't require perfect candidates. It requires engaged citizens. Your vote signals that you as a citizen exists, that your community matters, that your future is not negotiable. When young people choose not to vote, systems rarely rush to fix themselves. And casting your vote is not just hope, it's hope in action. Now, I want to speak directly to the high school students in this room. I see you, and I remember being you. I mean, that's why I told my personal story about running track and field. I remember what it was like being in high school. And some of you might be thinking, this doesn't apply to me yet. I'm not old enough to vote. I'll deal with this later. So here's the thing, here's the truth in all of this. And I wish someone had told me this sooner. Your civic identity doesn't begin at 18. It does not. It begins when you start paying attention. When you notice what feels fair and what doesn't. Who gets heard and who has to jump higher just to be seen. You don't need all the answers yet. I know when you're young, you want to get all the answers. Take your time. But you do need to stay curious. Stay engaged. Stay in the race. Because very soon, it'll happen faster than you know it. Decisions will be made with you or without you. That's the reality. And you deserve a say. You deserve a say. Many young people feel disconnected from the current political system, and that feeling is valid. The two-party structure often feels rigid, outdated, and unresponsive. It forces false choices and limits imagination. Questioning that system is not a failure of citizenship. It's an act of it. I believe the future of democracy requires imagination. New parties, independent movements, coalition built around issues, not labels, stronger local and state engagement. But here is the non-negotiable truth. You cannot change system if you refuse to engage with it. Reform does not come from opting out. It comes from sustained participation from the inside out. So where do we go from here? We vote, even when the choices are imperfect. We stay informed, even when it is uncomfortable. We organize locally, not just nationally. We show up for school boards, city councils, community spaces. We hold leaders accountable consistently, not every 4 years, not every 2 years, consistently. Because democracy is not a sprint. It's a long race with hurdles. Growing up in Hempstead, running those races, studying quietly at Hofstra Library, I didn't know exactly where life would take me. But I learned this. Obstacles are not signals to stop. They are signals to rise. Democracy, like the 400 intermediate hurdles, demands endurance. It demands courage. And it demands that we keep moving forward even when the next barrier looks impossible. So when you encounter resistance, remember that obstacles. See? I said pay attention, we're gonna come back to it. Obstacles. Hope is not passive. Hope stays in the race. Hope clears hurdle. And always remember, hope is action. The future of this democracy depends whether we decide to keep running and keep jumping together. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Garfield Hardeman. I'm a junior business analytics major here at Hofstra University. Today I have the pleasure of introducing our three co-moderators for today's panel. First is Dr. Tamika Robinson. She is the Senior Associate Dean of the Rabinowitz Honors College and a Professor of Rhetoric and Public Advocacy at Hofstra University. An internationally recognized scholar and academic leader, Dr. Robinson's work examines the intersections of health, culture, and public policy with a sustained commitment to interdisciplinary learning, undergraduate research, and equity-centered education. Next, Dr. Rosanna Perotti is a professor of political science at Hofstra University and the director of Hofstra Votes campaign. The Hofstra Votes campaign, which is designed to encourage members of the campus community to register and vote, is part of an effort that Hofstra hosts to increase campus voter registration on campus. It hosts events around voting machines, demonstrations, as well as lectures, panels, and other events addressing a variety of policy issues and reflecting a range of political views. Finally, I have the pleasure of introducing Linda Girardi, a senior at Hofstra University. Linda, who is majoring in political science with a minor in women's studies, has experience working for human rights organizations in the United States and in Jordan, at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation and the Jordanian National Commission for Women. Her work focused on women's rights, violations, and advancing the status of women and girls in Jordan through projects like her Educational Development Plan in Iraq and a proposal for an early detection system for gender and family-based violence in Jordan. Thank you. Enjoy the panel.
Thank you so much for being with us. We have gathered some questions with the help of high school students and students in our own classes. So the questions that we're going to ask you are reflective of that diversity of sources. I'm going to start off here and ask a question that may be on the minds of high school and certainly college students. What was it like growing up with two Haitian immigrant parents in the United States? You talked about their experience, or what about your experience? Did it inspire your political work?
Oh my gosh, it was tough. Growing up with, I can be clear, I love my parents and they were the best ever, and they are the reasons that I, part of where I am today. They are very much the reason why I'm the person that you see sitting in front of you. But, I grew up in a very conservative household, very strict. My parents worked 7 days a week. We went to church on Sundays, but it was like 3-4 hours of church. I went to a Catholic high school, and I was very much othered during my time growing up, because my parents were immigrants, they were different, a different culture. And one of the things that I had to do, which is why I wrote that line in my remarks about knowing the history. It's so important to know your history and where you came from. And I became very prideful of my Haitian background when I learned that it's the first Black Republic. Haiti was the first Black Republic, 1804. Think about Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines. And so when you learn your story, your history, where you're from, and you really go in deep, you'll find some pride in it. And so that's what I was able to do. But they were very much about education, and so going to school, going to college was incredibly important. Now, they wanted me to go to medical school. They wanted me to be a doctor. And when I told them that I wasn't going to be a doctor, they were really upset about that. And then to turn around and say I'm going to go into politics, they were fearful. Because remember, as I was talking in my remarks, and if you know the story of Haiti, it was a dictatorship. They grew up in a dictatorship when they were younger. And so in their minds, they envisioned me being beaten up, thrown on the corner somewhere, because politics there, at the time, it had left such a bad taste in their mouths. So that is not what they wanted for me. And when I ended up working for Barack Obama and he becoming the first Black president and obviously making history, that's when they were like, oh, we get what's happening. We understand. And they became really proud of what I was trying to accomplish and where my career was headed. And obviously when I became White House press secretary, it was a big deal for them as well. And so it was a journey. They evolved into me getting into politics.
When did you actually know you wanted to get into politics?
It took a long time. So, I meet a lot of young people, which are very impressive young people, who say to me, especially in college, they have a double major, minor, and a major in this, and it's so impressive because they know exactly where their career is going or where they want their career to go. I was lost. I was very lost when I was in college, coming out of college. I did not know where I was taking my career or who I was really. And so I always say this, my career was a zigzag. It wasn't a direct trajectory. And the reason I share that is I want young people to know it's okay. And that's why I was trying to say, you don't have to have all the answers right now. You do have to be ambitious, you do have to be curious, and you do have to have a passion. It's always important to have a passion. And so it took me a little bit of time. I left college thinking that I was going to go to medical school, and I did not do that. And so when I graduated from college, I was trying to figure it out. And so I worked for 2 years, or a year and a half, I worked for a non-for-profit. Then I went to grad school, and it was until it was grad school that I realized, oh my gosh, I want to change people's lives by doing public policy. That's your world. And I did local politics because local politics is incredibly powerful. you know, yes, I get accolades for doing national stuff, but local politics is where you make real change. And so that's how it all started, city council, and then moving on from there.
So for the students in the audience who may be in a similar situation you once were, not knowing what they want to do, what was your first internship and what was that like?
Like, I was all over the place. Guys, I was so lost. I'm not even, I've done, I'm trying to think, I worked for Citizens Campaign for the Environment. I think they're still around, they're on Long Island, and I had this real thirst for environmental justice. I worked for Estee Lauder. Like, I did so much different things, and I used to do this thing, top telemarketing, where you would go in a room and you would call people, and I mean, I did it all. I tutored calculus 1 and 2. Like, I mean, I was just all over the place. Also trying to make money, obviously, but trying to figure out where am I going. Because the Estee Lauder thing is because I had I was a biochem major. So after I left, I worked in the labs of Estee Lauder. So that's the connection there. But I really was trying to figure it out. I really was. And then when I went to grad school, my internship was working at City Hall in New York City. So that was really interesting, working for elected officials. So that's when I realized, oh, maybe there's something there that I can do to help create and be part of pushing important policy that would change the lives of, like, my parents' lives.
Okay, so I'm going to move the conversation to your time in the White House. So, as the press secretary under the Biden administration, what did you find is the most rewarding aspect of the job?
So, I gotta tell you, it was hard. It was hard. It's hard working in the White House. And when I was White House press secretary, I was on the microscope every single day. I was the White House press secretary for 2.5 years. I was the longest serving female White House press secretary. I mean, you don't do those jobs very long. You don't do any job in the White House for more than a year, and I stayed in it for 2.5 years. And so there's that. But it was a privilege and an honor to have been in that role. And I mean, just think about it. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning every single day. Even when it was a weekend, I woke up 4:30 in the morning. I went to bed hopefully by 10, likely not. And you work 6-7 days. You travel a lot. I've been to probably more than 30 countries in 4 years. I went to more than 30 countries with the president. We traveled across the country. So it's a non-stop job. But what was the most amazing for me is because of all the communities that I belong to, there was so much pride from the communities that I belong to. So when I stood at that podium, yes, I was speaking for the president, yes, I was speaking on behalf of the American people, but I was also speaking for all these communities that I was part of. And you're in a bubble when you're in DC, you really are. And it's not until you get out of that bubble that I, for me personally, saw the effect of representation. How much representation mattered for people. How much they just feel seen by me standing behind that lectern at the podium. So that was really heartwarming. I mean, I would meet young girls, young people who were 8, 9 years old, who were, you know, I was their project for school, or dressing up like me. I remember I saw a video, and this actually came from one of the Secret Service agents, and he was like, my niece, you know, it was like, did a project about you. I can't remember if it was Black History Month or Women's History Month, and he showed me a video, and she was, you know, dressed like me in a really lovely business outfit and had a wig on. And I was talking at the front of the school, and I got to meet her. She came to the White House and got to meet her, and we took a picture at the podium. But when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I didn't know who the White House press secretary was. I had no idea. And so when you break a glass ceiling, you break it for so many people, not just for you. And the power of people seeing you in that role matters. The amount of young people, boy or girl, doesn't matter, that come up to me and say, I want to be a White House press secretary. And so that was special to me.
So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how did you balance that emotional and moral weight of being the first and breaking these glass ceilings?
It's hard. It's hard. I think a couple of things for me is, when you're under a microscope, you're criticized for everything. Everything. You say tomato instead of tomato. Oh my gosh, she said tomato, or she doesn't know what she's thinking, and and whatever, all the things. And so for me, I had to make sure that I have self-care and took care of myself. Every person in here, my young people, make sure you understand what self-care is as you're going out into the world, as you're going to graduate from high school and go into college. Make sure you understand what it's like to have a community that supports you, that looks out for you. Look out for yourself, look out for each other. But self-care is so important. And we as a community, obviously I'm a Black woman, we are really horrible at self-care because we take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves. So I had to learn every morning. One of the things that I did for myself was I prayed, I meditated, I worked out every single morning. That was my self-care, and it was quiet because I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. So it was there was a quiet moment for myself. And also, all the negativity, I was somebody that never read anything negative about myself. I never even read anything positive. I wanted to live in a peace, something that I can control. Because when you are in these jobs, you lose control. Because my life wasn't mine. My life was connected to the White House, to the President of the United States. Think about that. It was connected to everything that he was doing. When I would go out to the supermarket or the coffee shop or my kid's school, people didn't see me as, oh, she's on personal time, she's Karine Jean-Pierre. No. They saw me as White House press secretary. So just think about it. I was never myself for 4 years. And what I mean by that is, if I was out and about, I had to be on. I had to be on. And so that's the life. That is truly the life. I can be long-winded, so I apologize. I'm a communicator, so I love to talk.
This is a question that came to us from a high school student. How did you advise the president on handling infighting among the traditional moderates and more progressive members of the Democratic Party, especially in the months leading up to the election?
Yeah, so here's what's so interesting about that is, I worked for someone, Joe Biden was very much someone who believed in reaching across the aisle. He has had a long career of bringing both sides together. And even during the 4 years, we had some successes in doing them, really big, important historical legislation. And I think, and here's what's interesting about the type of administration that we had, especially as it related to policy, domestic policy, a lot of progressives were on our side. I mean, Congressman AOC and Senator Bernie Sanders, they supported a lot of the work that we were doing on making sure that there was equality on issues that mattered, whether it was housing, healthcare. We did more on climate change than any other president before us, and so our administration before us. And so we had a lot of support from the key voices of the progressive part of the party. And look, I think because of the things that we talked about helped all Americans, whether it was, making sure healthcare was available to people, making sure that electricity didn't cost a whole lot of money for people, making sure that people had fair wages, because of the messaging and what we were trying to do, the platform that we were trying to lift up, it actually brought people together. But it's not easy, it's incredibly tough. We are in a situation where partisanship has taken hold in a way where it's us versus them. And that is one of the biggest problems with politics right now. And it's hard, it is not easy, but we have to figure out how to get past that.
I'm going to follow up by talking about independence, being an independent. Looking at recent polling data from Gallup, 45% of Americans now say that they're independent, 20% of them leaning towards Democrats, 15% leaning towards Republicans, 10% pure independents. And your recent book is about declaring to be an independent. You had been involved in some very high-profile Democratic campaigns, Tish James, Obama, John Edwards. Can you walk us through the decision to become an independent?
Yeah, and I talk about this in the book. I mean, look, I've had almost 20 years, definitely 15 years in politics, and I have somebody said this in commentating about, in their commentary about me. If you know me, the book is not a surprise, because I've always had an independent voice, even though I was in the Democratic Party for well over a decade, almost two. I've always done things my way, always. And so when I came out of the Biden-Harris administration a year ago, I mean, just think about it, 13 months ago, I was White House president. It wasn't that long ago. But when I came out of the Biden-Harris administration, I was really upset about how the party that I belonged to was behaving in that moment. And what I mean by that is we are in unprecedented times. I know we've been saying this for a long time, but no. We are in unprecedented times. Our democracy is hanging by a shoestring. We have someone who is sitting behind the Resolute desk in the most powerful office, not in the country, in the world, who's going after each and every one of us, who is taking away our freedoms. And so my thing was, we knew we lost in November of 2024. Why were we not prepared? And the first thing that came out of this current administration was anti-DEI, immigration. I mean, you name it. And my way of using my platform and starting a conversation is to highlight what people were really feeling. People were not feeling represented by either party. They were feeling the partisanship was too much. And this is the time where you don't give up the little power that you have. You actually fight for it. And so for me, the book was saying, this is what is happening with the two-party system, and the party that I belong to is not fighting hard enough. You do not pass nominees that are woefully unqualified to run agencies. You do not. And when you do that, you are giving up your power. And now look where we are. We have agencies that have been gutted. And so this is also why I talk about reimagining how we move forward, because we do have to reimagine how we move forward. So there was a disappointment for me on how the party was behaving, also in 2024. I talk about that extensively. But we need more from our leaders. We need more from our leaders. I see more of a fight, don't get me wrong. I think because of the criticism and because of the conversation and because of the polling that Democrats have seen, they have been fighting more. But now we're going into an election, in this midterm election in 2026, and we need a cohesive message. And really, I think at this point, the power is in the hands of the people. It's in the hands of the people.
I want to drill down a little bit more on the independent, because as I first read the book, I thought, well, you're withdrawing from the parties. And the parties are away. And then I realized that it's going through, especially towards the end of the book, it's about the job of an independent is really hard. And we have a room full of young people, and we want them to understand what
Yes, and I'm glad you, Rosanna, I'm glad you said that, because I am not calling for people to become independent. And what I mean by that is I'm not asking for a third-party system. I'm not asking for people to follow me and become independent. What I'm saying to people is we need to be independent thinkers. We have to, and what that means is we have to really analyze what is happening in front of us. We have to call out our leadership and question them and push them. Push them to do things that are critical to us in our communities. And in this moment, you think about the disinformation and misinformation that we have in front of us. You have to be an independent thinker. You have to be your own fact checker. You have to really look at the information that you're receiving and say to yourself, okay, can I trust this information? We are in a different world right now where it is very hard to figure out what is happening in front of us, the reality of things. And so I'm saying for people to be independent thinkers and to think about what is happening in your community, what is happening with people that you love, what is happening with communities that you belong to, what is happening in this world, what is happening with our government, how we perceive globally. We really have to analyze everything in front of us, because if we don't, it is going to get a lot harder and a lot tougher for all of us.
So it's okay to work for a candidate and to vote and to do those things that political parties encourage us to do, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I say that in my remarks that I just made, even in the book. It's like, there's not going to be perfect candidates. It's just not. I mean, look, I wrote the book to start a conversation, which it did. And the polling shows like where people are and how people are thinking. So that is aligned. But also, we have to be engaging and we have to stay active. We have to be involved in the political process, even if it's imperfect. And we have to hold ourselves accountable and the powerful people accountable as well. We have to be very clear about what we want for ourselves and our community. That's the independent thinking. But we can't disengage. We can't. Because like I said in my remarks, decisions are going to be made with you or without you.
In your book, you talk about expecting Democrats to convince you that they deserve your vote. What would it take for you?
I get this question all the time. I mean, look, I think right now, I haven't thought about, oh, what is it going to take to get me back in? What I want to do is use my platform for good. I want to use my platform to start a conversation. I want to use my platform, hopefully, to wake people up. I want to use my platform to talk about my experiences, and hopefully people see themselves in me, in my experience. I want to continue to push those Democratic leaders to do the right thing, to fight. The SAVE Act was just passed in the House last night. And for those of you who don't know what that is, and please read up on it, it basically is going to make it very difficult for people to vote. It's suppressing the vote. It's basically Jim Crow of its modern time. And you're going to have to present identification to go vote in. You're going to have to do a lot more just to exercise your civic duty. That is scary, folks. That is scary. And it's left the House, and obviously it basically moved in partisan lines with one Democrat voting with Republicans. Now it's going to the Senate. This is an opportunity to make sure your voice is being heard, because it's going over to the Senate. It's going to make it harder for young people to vote, women to vote, poor people to vote. That's the point. It's supposed to help them slow down or scare you from voting. We're coming into a critical election year. And so this is the time where you make sure the Democrats in the Senate stick together and make sure it doesn't pass. Call your Republican, senators who may represent you. This is the time you call them. They will listen. You call, you leave a message, you email, you write, you do the things that you need to do to make sure that they hear you loud and clear. And so those are the things that I want to make sure that we hold powerful people accountable, Democrats, Republicans. That's how I want to use my voice and my platform.
So I want to return to something you talked about a little bit earlier, the power of representation. So as the first Black, the first openly queer and immigrant press secretary, that has a lot of meaning. And you talked about the pressure that caused, but there are some people who say we should de-emphasize our identities when it comes to politics.
So this is so interesting. One of the criticisms that I get is, why do you always talk about that? Why do you always talk about being Black, being, gay, being immigrant? And I said, I actually don't. You guys talk about it. Because that's how you criticize me. And that's how you try to define me. And so what I've done is I lean into it. I just lean into it. Yeah, okay, I'm all these things. But if anything, it brings something special to the table. It brings my experience to the table. Remember, I was also a senior advisor. As White House press secretary, I was in rooms. I was in the Oval Office. The President of the United States, when they pick their White House president, they don't just pick anybody. They pick someone that they have a relationship with. And so by being all of those things, I brought all of those things to the table. Not because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna bring my gayness and my da-da-da. No. It's because it's my lived experience. It's my lived experience. It is who I am. It is all of the things that make me the person that I am. It's my lived experience. And so when I was at the podium and I would talk about an awful shooting that occurred, I'm a mom. At the time of an elementary school kid. Yeah, you know what? When I'm talking about Uvalde, which was, my kid was the same age as some of those kids, 19 kids that lost their lives through violence, I felt it. I felt it here. And so I think I was able to connect from that podium in a different way because I think about it. I think about it when I send my child off to school. Just this past Monday, there was a shooting near my daughter's school. So those are lived experiences that you have. When I would talk about a trans person who was attacked, yeah, you know what? I'm going to feel that. When Haitian migrants were saying Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio were eating dogs and cats, guess what? I'm going to feel that. As a Black woman walking through this world, there were things that I was able to feel differently and understand differently and speak about it differently because of my lived experience. So yeah, representation matters. In this day, 2026, we're still trying to break ceilings. And it matters to young people to see themselves, to be able to be told, or not even because they're seeing it, they're able to know, I can do that. I can be her. I can be him. I can do that. I remember when I was working for President Obama, there was this photo that went pretty viral. And it's President Obama in the Oval Office. And there's this little Black boy, and he bends down, and the little Black boy is touching his hair. And the little boy was like, oh, like he's like me. And then the president didn't have to say anything. That visualization is so incredibly powerful. So, no, I don't think we should move away from it. I think we should lean into it.
Segueing a little bit more into media and politics, you discussed a little bit earlier about how you've always done things your way. This is actually a question that comes from Hempstead High School and Dina Platt's APUS government class, wherever Dina Platt's class is. What was the most difficult part of being press secretary, and could you speak about what it was like to be responsible for speaking on behalf of somebody else?
It's hard. It's really hard. Again, privilege and honor, will always say that because it was a privilege and an honor. But it is hard. Again, you're not speaking for yourself. You're speaking for someone else, regardless if you agree or disagree. It's a job, just like any of you who go to work. You're doing your job to the best of your abilities. So it is hard. look, we happen to be, I think the 4 years of our administration was hard. There were things that were happening. We came into the administration in 2021, where I think I easily argue none of you were in schools or going to work. Remember COVID? When I walked into the White House on January 20th, 2021, I was wearing not the soft mask. We had to wear those plastic masks. And we had to stay 6 feet from each other. It was a 4 years that was so hard because so many things were happening in the world and in this country that were affecting all of us. And so, you wake up to the question, you wake up and you don't know what's going to happen in the world. I would wake up and be like, oh God, please. Because you don't know what's going to happen. You really don't know. And you have to spring up, and you have to be active, and you have to be in the game, and you have to be ready, and you have to be, again, my life was under a microscope. I remember I was at the podium once, and Queen Elizabeth had passed away. And we all knew that she had passed away before I went to the podium, but I could not talk about it because there's a protocol. There's a protocol with the Queen, the monarch. I mean, when she dies, or in the monarchy, there's a protocol. So even though it was getting confirmed that she had passed, I could not. I had to be really careful what I said at the podium, because in there, I think the way it works is like the Prime Minister has to call the President, and when that's happened, then we can make a statement. So I'm at the podium, and it hadn't been confirmed. And the press is like, what are you going to say, Karine, what does the president say about the passing of Queen Elizabeth? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, well, as far as we know, right, it hasn't been, blah, blah, blah. And then it finally was confirmed that while the briefing was happening, that she had passed. But I couldn't say anything. Because, again, there's a protocol. And I remember I was told there was this one line that I can say, like, our hearts go out to the people of England. That's the only thing that I could say, because the Prime Minister has to call the President. I mean, so there are so many intricacies and nuances to the job that you have to be careful about. And so that's just like one simple example that I bring forth, that it's a difficult job because everything you say is under a microscope, and you never know what's going to happen. You literally don't know what's going to happen and what you need to respond to.
So now I suppose with the absence of a protocol as an independent entering the media, is it more difficult for you to speak on behalf of yourself or somebody else?
Oh, it's easy, because I'm speaking for myself, hence the book, right? I'm able to say whatever it is that I want to say, and I'm able to speak for myself. It's actually really weird, because you go back to old habits of speaking for someone else. And so, so now I feel really free to speak for me, and so it's been wonderful. And one of the things that is really important to me is to speak to young people and to have these types of difficult conversations or important conversations, even nuanced conversations about where we are today and moving forward.
That's actually a good segue for the younger students in the audience who are now looking to make their own voice and speak for themselves. What activities would you suggest they get involved in?
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting. That's a good question. Because I'm going to tell you things that I never did. Right? Which is like, look, if there's a student government association, and if you really want to get involved in government and politics and do it as a career, or interested in it, or want to be more involved in like your civic duties, join a student government association. Get involved in even the politics of your school and what's happening. You could be a voice in how to improve your school. What is needed in your school. And so that's a way that you can get involved. Get involved in your community, your church, youth organizations, community organizations. There are things that you can do. You know, if you are interested in the police department, I'm sure there's youth programs there, the fire department, I'm sure there's youth, I mean, there are so many ways to engage and get involved in your community. And it's all about your passion, right? It's all about what moves you, what wakes you up in the morning, what excites you. Lean in. That's what I would say, lean in.
Thank you. This last question actually comes from Great Neck South High School. And
Great Neck.
Yes, Great Neck. But I do feel like it is definitely one echoed by many students here at Hofstra as well. Americans have been feeling a sense of alienation from political processes in recent years. Young Americans in particular feel like their representatives no longer advocate positions which they support, and they do not represent their needs. What actions can such people take to encourage elected officials to represent their beliefs more faithfully?
That's literally the book, what I talk about. No. But I, you know, it really is the thought that my mental exercise that I have in the book about where we are in this moment and keeping leaders accountable. Look, here's what I would say to all my young folks. Run for office. Get involved. After whatever the craziness that's happening right now, it will be over at some point. We are going to have to reimagine and rebuild this country, these agencies that have been gutted, the Department of Education, you name them, FEMA, you name them. And it is going to be really important to have your voice involved. Whether you decide to do public policy, whether you decide to run, I really encourage young people to get involved and run for office. Seriously. Do it. Do it. Our mayor is in New York City is 34 years old, guys. 34, the youngest mayor of New York City, who excites young people, who talks about issues that matter. You don't have to agree with all of his policies, but he does talk about affordability. I mean, just imagine that. And imagine that. You can have a voice. You have a voice. Like you can, you have a voice. You just have to utilize it. Run for office. I'll help you. But that's what I want to see. I want to see young people get civic engaged as early as possible. It's so incredibly important.
Well, Karine, thank you so much for pouring your wisdom and energy.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.